Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope you guys are all having fantastic Mondays. It feels like it's been already an entire week's worth of shows. Outkick the Show presented by Oddshark. Go to Oddshark for all your gambling and informational related needs. And oh, by the way, it's almost the holiday season. Maybe you need to save some money. You know where you should go? To my friends at thehomeloanexpert.com, and you will get hooked up right now with the best possible mortgage rate that will save you thousands of dollars in the process over the next several years. They can turn a 4% rate into a 2% rate. They can make sure that you can afford all the presents and everything else that you're going to end up spending money on that you had no idea you're going to end up spending money on. My wife told me the other day, hey, I'm taking the kids skiing for a week while you're working. Guess what? That's welcome in to my life, welcome into dad life, welcome into family life. Always end up spending more money than you would possibly anticipate. Okay, I think this is absolutely fantastic. This story. I, again, want to applaud the University of Tennessee fan base for standing up and saying we won't take Greg Schiano. We will not allow Jimmy Haslam, who is 1-26 in his past 27 games as the head man of the Cleveland Browns, to decide that Greg Schiano should be the next head coach at Tennessee. The Haslams have been involved in the last 4 hires at the University of Tennessee. 3 ADs have now come and gone over those 4 hires. They wanted Lane Kiffin. They got Lane Kiffin. They wanted Derek Dooley. They got Derek Dooley. They wanted Butch Jones. They got Butch Jones. And now they wanted Greg Schiano, and they got him, and Tennessee fans said no. We don't care that you are billionaires. We don't care that you happen to have a lot of influence and a lot of money. We are not going to allow you to continue to make bad coaching decisions on behalf of the University of Tennessee. Why would you allow a guy in John Curry who got run off at Kansas State because he ran off the most successful basketball coach of all time in Frank Martin? Congratulations to South Carolina fans. You owe your trip to the Final Four to the fact that John Curry couldn't keep Frank Martin happy. We also know already that Jimmy Haslam has made a series of awful hires, and as a result, it is a disaster of an administration making disastrous hires. Now, what I love about this story right now is that all of the national sports media have turned into their own mob attacking the Tennessee fan base mob. Let's just take a step back here for a minute. Why is it wrong for a fan base and top boosters who were not informed that their school was going to be hiring Greg Schiano to decide that they're not going to stand up for it? Aren't those the stakeholders in this story? Why in the world would you make an argument that Tennessee fans are not entitled to revolt if they believe that Greg Schiano is a bad coaching hire? Some stats for you. Greg Schiano in the Big East, 28-48. 68-67 overall. Greg Schiano in the NFL, 7-9, then 4-12, fired for, among other things, purportedly leaking the fact that his quarterback was in a substance abuse treatment facility, which violated HIPAA rules as well as NFL rules, for an absolute mutiny in his locker room. So why in the world on the field would you say this is the guy that's going to unite the Tennessee fan base? This is a massive hire. Tennessee fans want a hire who can be competitive and who can make them feel good about Tennessee football again. Greg Schiano's not that guy. I applaud Tennessee fans for standing up and saying, no, we won't accept this. And by the way, people are like, oh, Clay Travis leads an internet mob. Let me tell you this. I don't ever look behind me to see who agrees with what I say. Everybody out there who ever watches this show knows exactly what I am talking about. Think of all the opinions I have. How often am I standing on an island, the only person with the balls to have that opinion? How many people out there went after Michael Bennett for lying? How many people out there defended Ryan Lochte? How many people really aggressively went after Ezekiel Elliott's accuser? I stand all the time on an island because I know I'm right because I've done my research and I'm confident in my opinion. I don't stick my finger up in the air and see which way the wind is blowing. I don't look around and say, boy, I hope other people agree with me here. When I came out and said Greg Schiano was the wrong hire for Tennessee, I didn't know how it was going to be received. I didn't know that Tennessee fans were all going to agree with me. I made the case for why I believed he was a bad hire. Again, 28-48 in the Big East. He hasn't coached in 4 years. He got fired because all his players hated him at Tampa Bay. He is not a guy from the South that can unite the fan base in any way. And why do I care? People are like, oh, you're a hypocrite. You started a Twitter mob. No, I gave my opinion and other people agreed with it. And as a result, we had a substantive impact on the future of Tennessee, which I think is going to lead to a better head coach than would have otherwise been hired. I don't start Twitter mobs. I give you my opinion. If people agree with them, then they line up behind me, and we're really fucking powerful. You know why? Because millions of people consume Outkick content every day and every week now. That's the truth. You go look at the discernible numbers. We just tweeted out a link. Mike and Mike just died. We just tweeted out a link. Do you know the sports talk radio show in the entire country that's up the most in the last years? It's us. Everybody else out there is just trying to stay even. We're up like 30%, almost 100% in overall podcast streaming numbers. That's unbelievable. People say, oh, you shouldn't have tweeted out the AD's contact. Why? Why should I not tweet out the AD's contact and allow fans to let them know that they don't like the opinion? Some people could have tweeted that they love the opinion. I'm not apologizing for anything that I did. I would do it again. People say, oh, you shouldn't have referenced the Jerry Sandusky matter. Wait a minute. This is what's fascinating. All these national media members lined up and said that Art Briles didn't deserve to get a CFL coaching assistant job because they said he was alleged to have done improper things at Baylor. Remember, Baylor paid Art Briles millions of dollars to leave and never, ever convicted him. He's never been charged of anything. He's never been directly proven to have done anything wrong as the Baylor coach. Okay? That is really kind of fascinating. And by the way, yes, John Curry's numbers and all that information, public on website, right? All the stuff that I gave out, you can find if you search it out on the Tennessee website, all right? So that's a stupid argument. And if you had a situation where this report was in court testimony, now Greg Schiano denies it, but this is what was testified to by Mike McQueary under oath in a deposition. In his testimony, Mike McQueary, former Penn State assistant coach, claimed, I can't remember if it was one night or one morning, but Greg Schiano had come into his office white as a ghost and said he just saw Jerry doing something to a boy in the shower, and that's it. That's all he ever told me. Now, Greg Schiano denies that he was involved in that at all. But if you've got a mediocre coach with a mediocre record who hasn't coached in 4 years as a head coach, who got run out of Tampa Bay because the players all hated him because he was an autocratic, didactic dictator, why is it a bad thing to say, hey, this coach isn't very good, and oh, by the way, I don't know if Tennessee should be making a decision to be connected in any way to the worst story in the history of college athletics. In the same way that many people out there right now would say, you know what, I don't really want to touch anybody at Baylor. There's a lot of people. That entire coaching staff got cleaned out. And a lot of people made the decision, I am not going to actually get involved in hiring anybody from Baylor. And you could say, you know what, I disagree. The Baylor people are innocent. I did my research and everything else. Fine. You can certainly do that. This is what I believe is the truth. What are people saying? Paul Feinbaum wants me to call in? I'm not allowed to go on. I'm not allowed to go on ESPN. So I would 100% call into Paul Feinbaum. Feinbaum's got my cell phone number. If he wants me to call in, he can text me and I'll come on as a guest. I'm not allowed to actually come on. So if Feinbaum actually wants me to come on, you guys can tweet him on Twitter and say, text Clay and tell him you want him to come on, and I will call in right now. He's got my cell phone number. He can text me. He can tell me to come on. I'm not allowed right now to go on any ESPN-related shows. I got an ISDN in my house. They can dial me up, and I'll sit here and talk crystal clear. I just hopped off the show with Doug Gottlieb. Happy to go on Feinbaum. He's a buddy of mine. Happy to go on with him anytime. But that is the story. So why are people like, oh, my God, I can't believe that Tennessee people decided they didn't want a mediocre coach who didn't unite the fan base, who has no connection to the SEC, who went 28-48 in the Big East. People are like, oh, look at Rutgers now. Well, they're in the Big Ten East now. They play Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State every year. They used to just play the Big East schedule. I don't understand how this is remotely a controversy. A fan base decided they didn't want to coach, and they looked at his history, and they talked about everything surrounding it, and they said, this is a bad decision for the University of Tennessee. I don't understand at all how that is controversial. And why in the world does the national media care? Like, why are they grabbing their pearls and shrieking and being like, oh my God, this is unacceptable? It doesn't make any sense. If Greg Schiano is such an amazing coaching hire, why aren't Texas A&M, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Arizona State all on planes right now to Columbus fighting their asses off to go hire him as their own coaches? Do you think that the Texas A&M, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Arizona State jobs, what everybody out there at those programs would be like, fuck yeah, we got Greg Schiano? No, because he is not actually that sought after of a coach. And that's my point here. The Tennessee administration has done a shitty job hiring coaches. And the Tennessee fan base, which is among the most loyal in all of sports, which produces consistent top 10 college football crowds and also top 10 college basketball crowds, decided, you know what? This is not a decision that we're allowing to happen here. Greg Schiano is not going to reunite the fan base. We don't want Butch Jones 2.0. Butch Jones, by the way, beat Greg Schiano's Rutgers team's ass the last year that Greg Schiano was at Rutgers. Butch Jones took Cincinnati and beat that ass. Do you want a guy who gets blown out by Butch Jones to be the next coach of Tennessee? I just don't understand why this is controversial. People say, well, there's no evidence 100% that he did anything improper. Okay. Get Jerry Sandusky. He can, sure, Greg Schiano can deny any connection to it at all. But so why does Tennessee need to accept that that is even an issue if there are 100 guys who have no connection whatsoever to any court testimony about witnessing child rape? Wouldn't you prefer that they do that hire instead? Now, is it true that if Nick Saban had this on his resume and Nick Saban were a coaching free agent, that fan bases would say, well, that's hearsay? Yeah, certainly that's true. That's true because everything in life is about your problems versus your talents. So long as your talents exceed your problems, you will always be employed. And so if Greg Schiano had a record of 90-10 as a head coach and he was associated with this, then yeah, no problem here. Here's the other question I have for you. If Schiano is such a good coach, why did Penn State pass on him twice? It's a fascinating question nobody else is asking. This is a guy who had been an assistant at Penn State and wanted the job. Twice it came open. They hired Bill O'Brien and James Franklin. Why didn't they hire Greg Schiano? Because they didn't want anybody connected to the Sandusky issues. They didn't want anybody on the staff who had been there at that time. I don't understand how the national media right now is losing their minds over this story. This makes the national media look awful. All they're doing is carrying water for people so they can continue to get tipped off about who the next coach is going to be. That's the truth. There's no legitimacy to it whatsoever. When you actually look at the facts here, again, I'm just going to lay out the facts. If you had a head coaching hire to make and your fan base had been furious over sucking for 10 years, would you want a guy who was 68-67 in the Big East, who had not coached as a head coach in 4 years, who was 28-48 in conference games, who had just gotten fired for being 4-12 in the NFL, and for being a total bad fit from a player perspective? Why in the world would you want this guy? Is there anybody out there? Again, there's a lot of people watching right now who are A&M, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Arizona State fans. No other comments. This guy's never coached in the SEC. He hasn't proven he can recruit at a high level. He's got a brusque personality that's not going to play well in Knoxville. Why in the world would you think that would be a good fit? Is there anybody? Just stop the comments for a second on both Facebook and here. Is there anybody out there right now, thousands of you hanging out right now with us here on Outkick the Show, thank you. Is there anybody right now who's a Texas A&M, a Nebraska, an Arkansas, and an Arizona State fan who would have Greg Schiano as your head coach? I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me. Was there anybody else out there right now who has Texas A&M, Nebraska, Arkansas, or Arizona State? Anybody out there who would want him as a hire? I mean, honestly, I'm going to open up the phones tomorrow on the radio show, and I'm going to allow you to say it. Would Arizona State fans be like, fuck yeah, we replaced Todd Graham with Greg Schiano? Would Arkansas fans be like, yeah, we got rid of Brett Bielema, but we got this random dude from Rutgers now. We're going to fucking kick ass. Would Nebraska fans be like, the coach who's going to bring us back from a decade of obsolescence? It's Greg Schiano. Would Texas A&M fans be like, hey, we just fired Kevin Sumlin even though he was 52-27 and really good in the SEC West? But this guy, Greg Schiano, he's going to beat Nick Saban. There's no way Nick Saban's ever going to be able to handle him. Gus Malzahn is fucked. There's nobody out there who wants it. Yet the national media is running from it. I'll tell you what this really stems from. There are a lot of people in the national media who are afraid of my influence. They know that the only reason they matter is because somebody texts them info and they can go on Twitter and say, breaking X. Breaking. The new head coach at Arizona State is X. If they don't have that information, nobody cares about them. That's the truth. Their information is almost worthless. In order to keep those texts coming, do you know what you have to do? You have to give positive treatment to the people who give you those texts. That's what this really is about if you read behind the lines. Greg Schiano has got a lot of allies in the media, and they have decided to defend him because that way they get this opportunity to continue. That's how you keep getting the text. See, access, nobody talks about this. Access is a double-edged sword. The reason why we rarely have coaches or players on my show is because I think, first of all, a lot of times they're bad guests. I'd rather take calls on my radio show than most of the time get a coach or a player. Because the coach or the player doesn't say anything interesting, and in order to keep them coming back, you have to not really ask them anything that interesting. Because if you really ask them anything interesting, they're like, oh my God, why would you ask me those questions? So by and large, we don't ever have coaches and players on. I'm not an access guy. We have an amazing collection of people who watch this. All the top executives at ESPN, they watch this show on Periscope and Facebook. All the top executives in the SEC, they watch and read Outkick. Okay, they're all out there. I know because they talk about it. But I don't need to be in the business of breaking every story, right? It's not worth it to me. I would rather be 100% honest for you every day. And so this idea that somehow, Clay Travis represents everything that's awful in the media today. Look, I am a fan. Just like I bet every single person who watches or listens to this broadcast, I am a fan. And every single day, my goal is to sit down and be as honest as I possibly can. For 3 hours on the radio, for every word that I write on my website, and for every minute that I speak on Periscope and Facebook. That's the truth. I don't consider myself to be better than any other fan. Now, I got better hair, I'm smarter, but I don't look down on fans. Even though I make fun of fan bases and things like that, it's because ultimately it's like a family affair, right? There are a lot of people in sports media who consider fans to be idiots. They consider fans to be idiots. That's what this story is also about. Oh, Tennessee fans are so stupid. Why is the wisdom of all of the Tennessee fan base together not a pretty valuable aspect of this story? This is, if everybody agrees that you made a bad decision, it can either mean that the fan base is all totally stupid or that you made a bad decision. Which of those would you find more likely? If 95% of people out there disagreed in the Tennessee fan base with the hire of Greg Schiano, let's say 90%. That's hard to do. 90% of anything is tough to do. Do you think that 90% is wrong? Or do you think that the national media is right and that 90% is wrong? Who knows this story better? There is no doubt, okay? There is no doubt at all who knows this story better. And that is the truth, okay? The Tennessee fan base was right. They were right to revolt. They were right to stand up to an awful hire. Now, what questions? Feinbaum can call me out. I'll call him in a little bit, all right? If he texts me, let me check my phone to see if he's texted me while we're on the air. He hasn't texted me. If he wants me to come on his show, he can reach out and ask me to come on his show. I'm happy to go on. I've gone on the show for a long time. I am presently banned from going on ESPN. They won't allow me to go on any ESPN shows. They won't. This is a good story. I'm going to write about it later this week. My guys at The Home Loan Expert, if you need a mortgage right now, go to thehomeloanexpert.com. Go get a mortgage rate, turn it from a 4 to a 2%, save a lot of money. This is a true story. They decided they wanted to run ads on the SEC network. And so they contacted the SEC network and said, hey, We want to run a 30-second ad with Clay Travis standing beside Ryan Kelly. He's the home loan expert. We want to run a 30-second ad on the SEC network. We want to do this radio show, this television broadcast. We're offering you tens of thousands of dollars to advertise our product. It's thehomeloanexpert.com. Go get a mortgage. Okay? They offered that to the SEC network. Never heard of this happening before. The SEC network said via ESPN, it was ESPN. ESPN said, not only will we not allow Clay Travis to appear on any of our shows, but this is crazy. We will not allow Clay Travis to appear on any advertisements that air on any ESPN networks. ESPN is so triggered by my dominance and my rise that they won't even allow me to appear in a television commercial that airs on the SEC network. This is 100% true. I'm going to write about it later in the week. You're getting a preview here because this coaching search has turned into such a massive story. ESPN is so triggered by my dominance, by my dunking on them repetitively and putting my balls right in their face, that they will not allow me to appear on a television commercial that airs on ESPN. Think about how crazy that is. Now, it's one thing to ban me to go on as a guest. They have banned me from appearing in a 30-second television ad that airs on their network. It's 100% true. It's unbelievable how triggered they are by my dominance. That's the truth. Okay, who does Tennessee hire? There are right now, I have talked to a lot of people, there are, I believe, 8 guys that are all better than Greg Schiano that would take the Tennessee job if it is offered. Okay, here are those 8 guys. And Jason Witten is one of them. I read his quotes today where he didn't deny. Here's the quotes from Jason Witten. Somebody just sent it to me. Jason Witten, again, if you don't know, Jason Witten has met with the John Curry to talk about whether or not he'd be interested in being the coach one day. He admitted that he met John Curry, that they had a meeting, but he said, so I feel too good to think that I'd consider something like that at this point. So he kind of dodged it, but he would take the job. Trust me, based on who I have talked to, very confident in that. 8 guys, all right? I'm not counting Witten right now. 8 guys that I believe would take this job right now. Kevin Sumlin, Mike Leach, Lane Kiffin, Willie Taggart, Mike Norvell, Bobby Petrino, and as well, maybe David Cutcliffe, certainly I believe there's a good chance that Jeff Brom would as well. That's 8 guys. All 8 of those guys, not even counting T. Martin, are better than Greg Schiano would be. I love T. Martin also as the hire, getting the Vol band back together again. I'm very happy with that decision if it happens as well. I think that all of those things would be outstanding hires for Tennessee. All of those guys are better than what they could get with Greg Schiano. And here's the deal. I don't buy into this idea that the national media is also trying to peddle of nobody wants the Tennessee job now. If you are such a bitch of a coach that you are worried about a fan base that demands excellence, then you're not going to fit at Tennessee anyway. You are going to be like Butch Jones running around with a constant Dumbo ears, hearing everything that's possibly said about you, spouting off your awful platitudes brick by brick and all these other loser slogans. I want a coach who is so unbelievably confident in himself that he doesn't care what anybody in the fan base is saying about him because he's maniacally focused on winning. If you are a rabbit-eared coach who's going to hear every single thing that's said about you, positive or negative, then you're not a good fit for Tennessee. I'm not going to apologize for Tennessee. I want you to think about this for a sec. If back in 2006, when Rich Rodriguez decided, because of his wife evidently, not to take the Alabama job because of how crazy she thought that Alabama fan callers were in a pre-social media era, imagine what the reaction would have been like on Twitter. Everybody would have gotten out there and would have said, look at Alabama, that's a program whose best days are in the past, they can never win again. Think about it. From like 1993 to when Nick Saban was hired, for 14 or 15 years, Alabama was a dumpster fire of a program. Not very good, not outstanding at all, right? If social media had existed then, everybody would have lined up and talked about how Alabama's best days were in the past, how nobody wanted to deal with that crazy-ass fan base, how nobody wanted to deal with the insane outsized expectations of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then what happened? They hired Nick Saban and everything changed. And in fact, at the time that Nick Saban got hired, Tennessee was actually riding pretty high. And if you look at the history of these two programs, typically Tennessee is not good when Alabama is also good, right? Look at the history. The two winningest programs in the history of the SEC are Alabama and Tennessee. And what's fascinating about the history of this rivalry is, if you go look at it, both sides tend to win 8, 9, 10 years in a row. It's a series dominated by consistent dominance. Even though it's a relatively competitive long-range series, anybody who's ever watched Alabama and Tennessee play, if you're the wrong age, you can go like a decade and your team can never win. When I was a kid, Tennessee couldn't beat Alabama. Then when I turned to be like a teenager, Tennessee couldn't lose to Alabama, right? Now Tennessee can't beat Alabama again. At some point in time, college football is cyclical and Tennessee is going to roll back up. How do you do that? By getting the right coach. I don't believe that Greg Schiano is a coach to return Tennessee to excellence because he's really never done anything excellent in his coaching career. Now you can say, oh, he's at Rutgers. He couldn't have done anything better than what he did there. Okay, that's an argument you can make. I happen to disagree with it, which is why I did not like the hire. All 9 of those names that I just ran through, I loved them more than I like what would have been the hire of Greg Schiano. I will tell you this. Whoever the next coach at Tennessee is going to be, this fan base is now going to be more united than ever before to support that coach. Do you know why? Because we were united against Greg Schiano, and the national media has so poured on Tennessee and said, you guys are a bunch of fucksticks right now. You guys can't do anything right. You're a laughingstock. That it's going to draw Tennessee together, and they are going to ensure that this next coach has nothing at all to do other than win. I'm telling you, look out. They have united Tennessee. It's like when you go after a member of your family, you may fight inside all the time, but once somebody from an external force starts coming at you, everybody gets closer together. Tennessee fan base is a family, and this fan base is attacked right now. And we believe we did nothing wrong. We believe we made the right decision, and we're being unfairly criticized for doing the same thing, by the way, that all these other programs are doing. I said at the beginning, if you're a Texas A&M, Nebraska, Arkansas, or Arizona State fan, is there anybody out there at those 4 programs that would hire Greg Schiano and say, bang, we are on fire? We are in love with these coaching hires. No, there's not a single person out there right now who would say that. Not anybody. If Greg Schiano is such a great coach, start asking this. All these national media members are out there. Oh, well, you're Tennessee's idiots. Like, oh, nobody's going to take the Tennessee job. Tennessee's full of shit. Like, oh, I hate their fan base. I just ask you this. Every time they tweet something like that, I want you to respond, why aren't Texas A&M, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Arizona State hiring Greg Schiano? If he's such an unbelievable coaching can't-miss candidate, wouldn't all 4 of those jobs be falling all over themselves to go hire Greg Schiano? Wouldn't they all be begging Greg Schiano to come coach at their institution? This is the truth, okay? The reason why they're not doing that is because he's not that good of a coach. He's a mediocre coach that isn't that sought after. And Tennessee said, we don't want a mediocre coach that isn't that sought after, that has a 28-48 record in the Big East, that has a 68-67 record overall. They got fired in Tampa Bay after releasing, according to reports, if you read the NFL history, medical history about players getting substance abuse treatments. Somehow that news got leaked while Greg Schiano was in charge of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make him look better. And oh, by the way, there's also testimony in a court record of his alleged involvement in the Jerry Sandusky matter. Now, you can say you don't believe it. You believe Mike McQueary is mistaken, or you don't believe that it's true, but it's in a court document testified to under oath, said as follows. I can't remember if it was one night or one morning, but that Schiano, came into his office white as a ghost and said he just saw Jerry Sandusky doing something to a boy in the shower, and that's it. That's all he ever told me. Mike McQueary in a court transcript document. Okay? That's out there. If you don't believe it, you can certainly have the right to believe Greg Schiano. But if it's a mediocre coach and he's connected to, in some way at all, the largest scandal in the history of college athletics, the greatest crime ever perpetrated connected to college athletics on a campus, isn't it wise to maybe just say, well, go find somebody else? I think that the record alone is enough to disqualify Greg Schiano. But when you look at that report in a court transcript, under oath, said by Mike McQueary, isn't that totally fair to say, you know what, I don't want to be touching this? If you made the decision right now, I don't think I want to hire anybody associated with Baylor. Would anybody rip you for saying you don't want to hire anybody associated with Baylor? Or would everybody say, you know what, I can understand there are hundreds of coaches out there. Maybe it makes sense not to go get the guy who's associated with Art Briles right now. Remember, all the national media ensured that Art Briles couldn't even coach as an assistant coach in Canada. And that's despite the fact that Art Briles has gotten a multi-million-dollar payoff and has a letter saying that he did nothing wrong at all. If all of that is true, why in the world is it totally understandable that nobody would want to be connected to Baylor, but it's not acceptable at all that Tennessee fans don't want to be connected to Jerry Sandusky? I think it's a really bad argument by the national media. And I think what's also ironic about it is the national media has become a mob in and of itself. Most people are not willing to, in any way, I'll give Andy Staples credit. He wrote a column. He said, look, ultimately, when you work in the athletic department's office, you serve the fans. This Tennessee fan base has been poorly served for a decade. They want results. Okay, I am going to call my guy, Paul Feinbaum, now. Get your popcorn. Go tell Feinbaum that I'm going to call in. I'm even going to give him my ISDN line. Got to go get a drink. I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. Go check out OddsShark for all your gambling and informational related needs. As well, go check out your favorite mortgage lender, thehomeloanexpert.com. I am Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. Kisses, DBAP, boys and girls. Let's go get a good hire. I'm Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show.